This is a brush profile sanding head. As you move more towards a really high-end finish, you want to get rid of those chatter marks in all of your profiles. And I have been sanding them out by hand. There's some really expensive machines that you can put these wheels in and feed your mouldings through, and it'll take the chatter marks out, hopefully. You just undo that, take the bit of polystyrene out. Well, that's fetch this because it's got a slow stop. It's not going to unwind that shaft every time. It's also variable speed, and these things can't run very fast. I can hold this on the bench and run some mouldings under it to see if the concept is going to work for what I need it to do. For this to work, I think it's got to have quite an even feed of the timber through. If you stop at any point, it's just going to burnish like a little divot in and completely defeat the object of trying to sand out any chatter mark. I can make a little bed that just sits on my spindle moulder. I can drop it on, use the power feed I've got on here. But to test the theory out, I want to sand this architrave through. So I'm going to feed it through something like that. I think I'm going to have to work out the angle of this architrave from like the bit I want to sand here to maybe the bit here. Set this up at the same angle. So here's what I've come up with. I've put a baseboard on the spindle, cut a hole out the bottom so that I can bevel that wheel and tilt it into the bed if I need to for smaller mouldings. I've got these battens here to give me a bit of angle on the cutter. I can change them to suit the moulding that I'm trying to sand. And then yeah, drill's just mounted in there. Got a little feed fence for the wheels, and the wheels obviously feed it through. Let's fire it up and see how it goes. So the results, what did it do? I pushed the two on the right here through the machine twice. I mean, probably got to play about with how much pressure it's applying on the moulding and stuff and what effect it has. But yeah, these are the ones that have been sanded. That in this moulding there's quite a decent flat along here, which showed up quite a lot of chatter. So if you get it in just in the light right, you could see them chatter marks, but I don't know if it's showing up on the screen. But they're pretty much, in this light anyway, they're pretty much non-existent now. Little dimples in the cuts. You can see it in this image here, see them ripples on that bit of flat just there. I think 150 grit was the right choice. It's taken just enough material off, but it's leaving quite a, not an aggressive finish, but you wouldn't want to go much more aggressive when you're painting these, or it's going to fur the grain up too much. So yeah, 150 grit was perfect choice, to be fair. See if the different lenses show it up. What it's also done is taken all the little sharp edges off all of these mouldings, which is great. You have to go around and do them by hand, so it looks kind of unfinished. If you leave all them edges really sharp on your mouldings, it looks like it's not been finished properly. So going around by hand and sanding them all in really adds a bit of quality to your work. Little look at the brushes there. I've just brushed probably 12 lengths through twice, and it's still looking like normal sandpaper really. I think I could probably put a tiny bit more pressure down. I'm not sure what effect it will have. I think if you put too much pressure, the whole high spots of the mouldings will fall through the sandpaper, and if you put too much pressure on, I think it'll end up not sanding like the tops of, say, that little bead, like that rounded bead there. The top of it will end up not getting sanded if you put too much pressure on. Could probably benefit from having some sort of oscillating action, or maybe even to counteract that, if you mounted the wheel slightly on the angle, so it was on the angle and it went across the top of that would counteract that effect. But then you're gonna be less likely to get in the edges of these grooves. But I think that pretty much sums up profile sanding, is to sand this truly and properly, perfectly everywhere. You need about 7 or 8 different heads coming in at all different angles and different directions. The machines you can buy, which are incredibly expensive for what they are, tend to have a wheel like this and then one spinning the other way, so it's almost pulling it through. So they're sort of opposite to each other. And then there's a third head on the back of the machine, almost on an arm, like a power feed, that you can sort of position, so you can tilt it, put it in sideways, or whatever you want to do. And you've got then 3 heads, so when you pass the moulding through, pushing it through twice was about the right amount of sanding. So I can see why they would put 2 sanding heads and then another one to get any awkward spots at the end. So yeah, it would be a fantastic machine to buy, but I can't afford £18,000 on a machine that will sand profiles, when I'm machining profiles probably maybe once a month or once every other month. I would machine something like this, like a cornice or some architraves or something. It's not something I do very often. It just doesn't warrant a machine of that sort of expense, unfortunately. So now I've made this and it works so incredibly well, I probably won't alter it, to be fair. I think the mounting of the drill and the head needs a system where it's easily adjustable in height. So whether I can make some sort of box sides with some toggle screws, you know, like these kip style fasteners. I just put a piece of plywood up both sides and had a kip fastener poking through in a slot, and then this one was also on a slotted bed, like maybe some rails that they were slotted into. I could lift up and tilt that as I needed to, fasten it off with the kip fasteners, and then also slide it in and out really easily with not too much effort to make that head as sort of universal as possible. And if I wanted to run them through in sort of both directions, obviously the drill runs that way and that way, so I could just take the head off, unbolt it, flip it round, and then run them through with the sanding head rotating the other way. And to be fair, I'm sure I could also make a little dust hood for it that sort of connected onto that hose. If I put a plywood box around this head and then just took that hose off and plunked it on there, I'd have a fairly decent dust extraction setup for it as well. So this head was from Gibbs Sandtech. You'll have to ring them up if you want to order one. They'll ask you what you want. This is a F6 head with a quick flex 28 segment, 100mm wide and 40mm brush in a 150 grit abrasive. I think we just need to name it now. I think there's a few decent things I can do to make it really usable, but we need a name for it. Maybe the Fladenator or Flabbergasted.